Okay, meeting, ready? Yep. All right, the meeting's called to order. Chad, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chairperson Phil Goldstein,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Marty Jost, Commissioner Lisa Bard,
Here.
Commissioner Tom Wood,
Here.
Commissioner Jeremy Holt,
Here.
alternate Wendy Newland, and alternate Mike Lewis.
Thank you. Amendments to the agenda. I've waited, 13 years to have an amendment to the agenda, and I'm going to amend the agenda, but it gives me no pleasure. As at least the commissioners know, we're losing Lisa here, our third longest serving commissioner. And this is a tough loss for us. So couple things. She warned me about any extended tribute here, but nevertheless, couple things. First of all, I want to read a comment. Marty Jost, our vice chair, could not be here tonight, unfortunately, but shares my sentiments that you're about to hear. And he sent this message for Lisa. Said, working with Lisa over the years has been a pleasure. This volunteer position can be difficult. We have to read, analyze, and gain insight from the packets. While the land use code is the standard we use to base our decisions, we also use this meeting forum to ask questions and make comments that both communicate community concerns and guide the applicant to strike a balance between their business needs and support the town vision. From the start, Lisa has excelled in both of these. We will miss her thoughtful questions and insights. Second comment I got was from my wife. Not only has Phil spoken often and admiringly of Lisa's dedication to the difficult job of planning commissioner, but she was one outstanding pickleball partner to me when we finished third in August's Timnath Community Park grand opening pickleball tournament, beating the best that the town staff could offer along the way. Like I said, I will miss Lisa as a playing partner, but Phil will miss her even more as his valued colleague. My comments. First one is metaphorical. It's interesting that Marty Jost, our vice chair, who normally sits over here on my left, has been our vice chair. Lisa, metaphorically, is here on my right and has been very much my right-hand person here. So that's the first thing I would tell you. It's my right-hand person, literally and figuratively. Next, and it speaks to how tough this job is. I would tell you, I know that she's been conflicted at times. We all are. She's a country girl, and unfortunately, I'm sure she's had to see the country turn to city here in Timnath, and I know that hasn't been easy, but she's done her job and she's fulfilled her obligation to counsel the town and more importantly, the land use code, and she's done it very, very well. I will tell you that I know she's read 200-page packets to get ready for meetings and parse the details far better than I could ever do. And for that too, we will miss her immensely. Lastly, for anybody out there that aspires to fill this vacancy which we're going to be posting soon, I would tell you, again, this is not an easy job. For anybody that thinks one comes in and simply votes however they personally think they should vote because they like something or don't like something, nope. Because I will tell you what we're going to be looking for, who we're going to be looking for is another Lisa. So I will personally miss her very much. With that, stand up. I think this This plaque says, Lisa Bard, Planning Commissioner, with deep appreciation for your dedicated service to the town of Timnath, 2017 to 2023, 6 years. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much. Very humbling. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve on this board. I have learned more from these people, this staff, this town than I ever dreamed possible. I laughed when people said, why did you do this? And it's like, I was bored. But I had reached a point in my life where I wanted to give back. And I wanted to give back to the community. I've been a resident of Colorado in Larimer County for 42 years, and watched it grow from, I mean, Timnath was nothing when I first moved here. It literally was the railroad station, the feed and bean. And Phil's right. I come from a background of agriculture. I come from a background of land use. I come from a background of public lands, multiple use, water, agriculture through and through and through and through. But I also come from a background of development and planning and zoning from both my father and my brother. And I watched them do some really good things well. And if you're going to grow and Timnath is going to grow, do it right. And I hope that we do it right. So it's been an honor and a pleasure. And to have served with you all has been just pure joy.
Thanks, staff. Matt.
I don't think I can follow that. So I'll just say thank you, Lisa, for your service. It has been a pleasure working with you as well.
Don.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Yeah, she had always the pointed questions. That was a very fruitful part of this. You know, when you get questions that are to the point and you have to answer those, that just makes the process work. You'll be missed.
Thank you all. All right, back to the agenda. Administrative determination of alternate voting. Wendy, you will vote tonight in place of Marty. Public comment. This is an opportunity for anybody to address the commission on anything that is not on the agenda. We will have a public hearing on the item that is on the agenda, correct? Kevin? We will. Okay. So anybody signed up for general public comment?
No.
Okay. So no, we will close the general public comment. Consent agenda consists solely of the approval of the September 5th, 2023 meeting minutes. Commissioners, any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to pass the consent agenda.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda is approved on a 5-0 vote. We have one business item, Willis Farm sketch plan. And Kevin, that is yours.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is, as you mentioned, this is for the Willis Farm sketch plan. So where we're at in the process is the beginning of the major subdivision process. So we've already gone through actually all 3 items there. We've been through a comp plan amendment, annexation and zoning. So we're here at the sketch plan process through that major subdivision process. This is the subject property, essentially located at the northwest corner of County Road 42E and Main Street, County Road 5, north of the Fisher subdivisions, just about 1/8 of a mile south of Prospect Road. The owner is Willis Estates LLC, represented tonight by Warren Turner, and then the applicant is TB Group, represented tonight by Kristen Turner. The zoning of the properties, the majority of the property is zoned I-1 industrial with a little corner pocket just in the north east side that is zoned RE estate residential. Go one more. So this sketch plan is for roughly 79 and a half acres with the proposal to provide 7 industrial lots and then 3 estate residential lots. The industrial lots will range from roughly 7.7 acres up to roughly 13.4 acres in size. And then the estate residential lots will range from roughly 0.87 acres to roughly 1.3 acres in size. As I'd mentioned, those estate residential lots are separated from the industrial portion of the property by the Lake Canal ditch, and they will have their sole access by Main Street. There won't be any connectivity over the ditch just for those 3 lots to the industrial. So then that means the industrial portion of the property will be accessed by County Road 42E from Main Street, and then McLaughlin Lane from the north from Prospect. This proposal will include a regional trail connection in accordance with the town's Prost plan that'll run along the from the east of the property, you'll kind of diagonally northwest along that Lake Canal ditch to the northeast corner of the property. And then this proposal will have roughly 16 acres of open space, which meets the minimum 20% open space for the development. A neighborhood meeting was held on September 25th to share the proposed plan and gather any feedback. And we had residents attend the meeting, and their and those concerns and questions are noted in the attached observation report. Staff has reviewed this application and it meets our review criteria. It meets the comprehensive plan designation and zoning for the property, and it meets our land use code and is consistent with criteria from our code as well. With that, I will turn it over to Kristen for a brief presentation.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
All
better.
right, I got the right button. So that's something to start with. I'm Kristen Turner with TV Group, and we have been working on the land planning for this. Just wanted to start by saying hi, Justin. It's good to see you with the Timnath logo on now. So we'll see you around a little bit more. So while they're pulling up the plan, I'm going to be really brief and then assume that you guys will have some questions for me. So as Kevin mentioned, the site is about 79.5 acres and we're bordered by Main Street, the future 42E extension, and McLaughlin. Would you mind forwarding? Oh, I get to do it. Thanks. There we go. Well, this is the only slide, so it'll keep that part of it easy. So we actually have 6 industrial lots that we're proposing here, and then 3 residential, estate residential lots that we're proposing. And the sizes range on those industrial lots anywhere between 8 and 13 acres, just under 8 to 13 acres. And those estate residential lots range between 0.87 acres to about 1.33 acres. So you guys will remember last time we were here for zoning, and we did have a concept plan that we brought with us to help depict what we envisioned for the site. And you're seeing the sketch plan now. So it's the first step of the platting process. And the sketch plan does look very similar to the concept plan that we brought in before. To point out a couple of the differences that you may notice, previously on the concept plan, we showed a lot more lots. I don't remember what our lot count was, but we broke up the site into like 1.5 acre lots. And that is really the most significant change from what our original concept was to what we're proposing as part of the sketch plat at this point is the larger industrial lots. And the goal behind that is simply our hope is to bring in some of those bigger users. If you think things like Hewlett Packard or something like that, that has more of like a campus type feel. CSU has satellite buildings all over town. You know, that would be an amazing use here. So that was the reason for the switch from some of those smaller lots to these larger lots. But again, it's just a sketch plan. So this is really kind of giving you the idea for the site. Nothing is locked in stone. And the next steps, should this be approved, would be a preliminary plat and a final plat. Let's see here. We do have about 16 acres of open space on this site right now. If this were to be approved and platted in the future, every single one of those industrial lots would come in again as a site development plan. So there would be an opportunity to look at this plan at preliminary, at final, and then site development plans for each of those individual lots. Each of those individual lots would also have on-site landscaping as well. So this was really just kind of showing you, what do your streetscapes look like? What do your perimeters look like? But when those lots come forward, they would be required to have full landscaping to meet the Timnath land use code. All of the required setbacks, buffering, things like that would be incorporated into those plans at that time for you to be able to review. So that is the gist of the plan and the changes from the concept that we showed you during zoning and what we're presenting at sketch. We did have a neighborhood meeting recently, and we had a handful of neighbors show up. So it was good conversation. And if it's helpful, I can fill you in on what we talked about, a little bit about what we talked about. Otherwise, I can close it there and wait for some questions.
Okay, let's, Kristen, you know our protocol here. We're gonna, first thing we're gonna do is open up the public comment on this, and you'll take your usual notes if we have any.
You bet.
And then we will have you. So do we have, Chad, has anybody signed up for?
We did not have anyone sign up, but
Oh, we do have a gentleman that does want to speak. So go ahead, come up and state your name and address, if you will, please.
Yeah, my name is Larry Ekblad, and I own the tree farm to the northwest corner there. So I have a large selection, a large enjoyment of the property. And I have one comment mainly, and that is originally when we started making this transition from residential over to commercial, the idea was that this was going to be the gateway into Timnath, and was also going to be developed more along the lines of Oak Ridge Business Park rather than industrial area. That's the wording that I thought was used during that conversation. And my concern with this sketch plan initially, and I brought it up I came to the neighborhood meeting, was a lot of the greenbelt area is to the south because of the electric wire there, and those people aren't existing there now. Where the people to the north and the people to the west are the people that are existing there that's going to impact that were here first. And it seems to me like those areas don't have enough of a greenbelt spot. Now, I'd also like to see more trees planted along there, more of a buffer from the area to the north and to the and I'm sure the people, Robin Phillips and the people over there and Bath to the west would also like to see that more of a buffer in the greenbelt area, and move some of the greenbelt area from the south there more to those areas. One comment I made, since I am growing trees there, and I've grown trees there for almost 35 years now, 40 years, is that, I volunteered to donate a lot of more trees along that north side. I don't expect the developer to mitigate that for me. I would like to mitigate that myself as much as we possibly can. As long as we have more space in there to develop a more of a tree buffer in between the commercial area. And I understand the commercial areas get developed and stuff, but I'm usually how these commercial areas get developed, I'm anticipating that a lot of those areas that the properties themselves, when they build the buildings, and the north side will be where they enter in with their trucking, if they have docks to unload trucks and stuff. And so I would just hope that you guys could follow through more with what you guys originally planned, which is going to be the gateway into Timnath, one of the original first commercial projects outside of Harmony Road, maybe one of the few and only commercial projects in this part of the town, and that it would be the beauty of it would be enhanced. I'm a big believer that everybody's going to want to come here, so make it nice, and leave a nice project for everybody else who stays here for the rest of their lives. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry. And we're going to get to some of that buffering here. And we have nobody else signed up, correct? Okay, so we now close public comment. Just a brief statement. and I don't know, other than Lisa, I don't know if anybody was, Lisa and Marty is not here, anybody else was here when this whole project got kicked off a while ago. But I will note something for the record, and that is we had the usual, and I see some people out there, we had the usual people here with knives and pitchforks up in arms, hoping that this big open space was going to always remain thusly. And the people from Homestead Estates, which I think is a very nice neighborhood. It's out in the county. And it was very gratifying to us long-serving commissioners that by the time we got done with that meeting at the next council meeting, when this came to council, these residents were very cordial in their acknowledgement that Planning Commission had done everything possible to try and temper their concerns about the buffer and other matters, while also acknowledging that we didn't know if we'd still be on Planning Commission or if the council would still be the same. So we hedged our bets a little bit, but here we are, although we're about to lose one of those commissioners. But so I'm going to tell you tonight, I would like to discuss some of these details that are particularly enumerated in the neighborhood report, and a couple big ones do deal with the buffering. So, but we do appreciate, I certainly appreciate, I'm sure Lisa does as well, the fact that people acknowledged, it doesn't always happen that way, that we can't pull up the drawbridge, that we, just because we're here, we can't keep other people and other businesses from coming. So with that, commissioners, I am going to open it up to questions. And if any or all of you don't cover some of the things that, as I mentioned here, are listed, that's going to be my framework for asking further questions. But let me hear what concerns and questions you have. And Kristen, if you would come back up, we'll have at it here if we could, please. So who would like to go first? Wendy?
This is probably for staff. Again, I wasn't here at the first one, but the buildings in these industrial lots, do they have to have a certain look like the buildings along Harmony Road?
So we don't have a specific design standard for industrial like we do on the Harmony Corridor. Even commercial off the Harmony Corridor has greater flexibility than the commercial on Harmony Corridor from that standpoint. So there's not a specific design standard. We do have in our code sections on certain types of materials that are allowed and not allowed to be used for building architecture, but there's not a specific architectural guideline for industrial.
Okay, and no height?
There's height restriction. We do have our height restriction within our industrial, just as we do every other zoning district, that any site plan would essentially have to come in and meet that requirement.
Okay. And then when is the traffic study done?
Traffic study is going to be on the next step with the preliminary plat. So that's when a further in-depth, detail on that traffic generation. Typically with industrial, depending on the type of industrial, it's a lot less of a traffic and intensity than a single family residential development, especially when you're talking on some lots that are in this 7 to 13 acre range. For the most part, you have some less traffic generation just because most people are coming, staying, and then not really leaving as frequently. But the traffic study will come at that next stage.
And who does our traffic studies, or is it the same group?
The applicant, they choose their own consultant to do their traffic study, and then our engineering department, they review the traffic study.
Okay, and then the last question. It's on page 3 of 3, and it says, and I just don't understand it, so somebody else might not either. It's about the negative impacts on adjacent land uses have been identified.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it says at this time, there are no identified negative impacts on adjacent land uses as the final users have been identified.
Oh, have
What does
not
that mean?
been. That's a typo. Thank you for that.
Okay. So they have not been.
No, final users have not been identified.
That's it. Thanks.
Tom.
I've got a question. The trail that runs along the canal, is that to be a paved trail, a gravel trail, or just a dirt road?
It'll be a paved trail. It's actually part of the town's Prost plan, master trail system. So it'll be a large paved concrete trail.
Great. And in the transportation, the draft transportation plan that the town is looking at now, County Road 5 is going to be upgraded. Is there sufficient right of way along the edge of the County Road 5 to allow for that expansion, additional lane or whatever may be required?
Yeah, when we get into the platting stages, that's where the right of way will be considered. That we will look at to see about getting the at the platting stages when the dedication of the required right of way will occur.
Because it's obvious that we're going to have to widen the road
Yep.
and we need.
There will be some constraints with the homestead estates to the north with, property lines and things up there. So when we get to that stage, we'll have to evaluate what the improvements look like and what the right of way looks like.
Great, thank you.
Lisa.
Few questions on some of this. I guess, first of all, in addressing some of the concerns that were raised during the community meeting. And specifically, I don't know if it was, you, the gentleman that asked about planting more and additional trees, and he just kind of put it off, said, well, it depends on what the applicants or what the actual, will be determined at the time of platting. And I guess my question is a little bit twofold. Those people in homestead estates, they don't have a whole lot of recourse on any of this. They're county, they can't appeal to Timnath. All they have to do is come to the, these meetings and speak their mind. I know this 60 feet comes from the northern boundary, but to their point, you're meeting the minimums of that 60 feet. You're not guaranteeing that there will be enough room to plant trees. The ditch runs through there. You've got more space down below where the power line is. Understandably, nobody wants to build underneath that big power line. But it seems to me that it would behoove the whole project if instead of 60 feet, it was 80 or something, and allowed a little bit more so that there could be more of a natural buffer along that line. Because when you're putting in industrial with no design standards that we have to meet, those are yet to be determined. There's not any consistency. You're certainly asking those people to take what you get. And maybe in being a good neighbor, you can give a little more and allow that buffer to be larger, allow it to be big enough that trees can be planted and give some of that room. So I guess it's more of a comment than a question, unless you want to address that.
Sure. Well, what I would say is that this plan actually has a varying buffer as it's drawn on this sketch plan. So 60 feet is the minimum that's required. This plan, and I went through and measured different areas through the buffer before I came in tonight. And so it ranges currently anywhere between 70 feet and 140 feet. So it definitely, we are hearing what everybody is saying and we are designing to that. Our ask, though, is not to have a commitment as part of the plan to increase the minimum buffer. There may end up being a pinch point in an area. And there was one area that I found where we were at like 67, something like that. So there may end up being an area when we get into platting, which we won't know right now until we know where all of our easements and utilities and things like that are, that a lot may need to come down to that 60. But we have continued to adjust that buffer from the point when we were working through zoning and the concept plan to the point that we're at now with the sketch plan, and take in everyone's input. And that is what's being reflected on the plan. So I know the discussion has been about providing a larger a buffer larger than 60. That is what this plan depicts. We're just asking that it not become a requirement of the plan. We intend to proceed with this plan, and you would see it again at plating. And that's where there would be another opportunity for discussion where, you know, if there was a constraint, we would be able to explain, here's the constraints in this area, or, you know, have any further discussion on that. But being very early in the process, it's always hard to narrow the guidelines that you're working on when you don't have all the data yet. We haven't gotten into that engineering piece of it. So I just wanted to point out that that is certainly something we have incorporated in response to what we're hearing. The other thing that I did want to note is that it doesn't look like it on these plans, but each of these lots will come back with landscaping plans within the lot as well. So beyond the buffer that we provide, there will be setbacks, rear lot setbacks, and I don't know those off the top of my head because we're not at that plan. Kevin might have them memorized for what, you know, how far back from that rear lot line a building would have to be set. And there will be landscaping requirements as well. And so additional landscaping will happen on those lots. We're just kind of seeing the perimeter of it as part of the sketch plan, since we don't have the full design for each of the lots.
So it's a trust fall.
What was that?
It's a trust fall.
It is, and all of our plans have grown that buffer area. So that is what we're showing.
And what it amounts to is that you're asking that we trust that you will keep that word and do the buffer as best you can, and then.
Well,
when you
and
come to the plot.
yeah, and really it's part of the process, right? You have set up the standards, you've developed this land use code that, you know, the commissioners and the council has decided is appropriate in the way the town should develop. And so we're just asking that we can operate within the code so that we have some flexibility as we get into our design. But our intent is to continue to provide some additional buffer in these areas where we are able to.
How was the discussion during the meeting about this?
About the buffer?
Neighborhood meeting, yeah. How'd that go?
Well, I mean, we explained this. You brought up another piece, and I think this might be what you're referring to. There was a request for residents north of us to be able to come and plant extra trees on the property. And so, you know, the conversation just kind of went on like, well, can we do that? Can we commit to it? And so I don't think there's not necessarily any issues from the development team with that. We don't have concerns with that. We just can't make a commitment to a private citizen about a landscape plan for a landscape plan that's not even submitted yet. So we have to go through the process with the town and we have to submit an appropriate landscape plan. And Warren, please correct me if I'm wrong, but assuming that, you know, the landscape plan is approved and if there's opportunities for more trees and residents would like to plant more trees, I would be surprised if anybody objected to that. So
Come up to the podium, Warren, if you want to make comment and identify yourself, please.
Warren Turner, 3291 Donzante Bay, representing the owner and speaking for the owner. I believe that final decision would still fall on Kevin Coble. We're completely open to it. No one's going to oppose planting trees in open space on our side. Yeah, it just depends on the easement and what it's around, but legally all for it.
Larry, I can't, with public comments closed, I'll speak to your offer here in a moment. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean that accepting that citizens will plant trees or be allowed to plant trees is great, and that's good, but it's also then putting not only the financial responsibility of those trees, but also the load, you know, the physical responsibility of planting it onto them, saying, well, private citizens will do it, then we don't have to. I just think it's, like I said, in the vein of being a good neighbor and really making a development that works and doesn't negatively impact those residents who've been there for so long. Every effort should be made to make that buffer happen.
yes, I agree. And for clarity, there is no intent of the development team to offset our responsibility for planting and buffering
Right, I know that.
to the neighbors. So we would absolutely provide, you know, a robust planting, along that buffer. And then if there was an opportunity where somebody wanted to do additional, we're not opposed to that. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that we will certainly be providing the planting.
As far as the residential lots, there's a little more buffer is wider there. Explain that. Why is that there?
Sure. Because of the way the ditch is aligned, there's actually buffer on both sides of the ditch. And that is just a requirement of any time you have a ditch or a stream or a water body or something like that. So there naturally ends up being additional buffer in that space.
But it doesn't follow through as you head up for the north and the west.
No,
Additional buffer?
it doesn't, because of the alignment of the stream versus the property line, or the ditch versus the property line.
And in those residential lots, you said one of the buildings will remain, the others will be torn down? 'Cause they're
Correct.
beyond repair. Okay. What about all the natural landscape? Any trees in that area? Are they survivable, or is there any in there?
It'll be evaluated as part of the landscape plan. So typically we go out and we look at those. If there's anything in question, then we have an arborist look at that and determine if they're a hazard or not. We like to keep landscape anytime we can, and those are some big, beautiful trees. So I think we would probably do our best to keep them as is if possible.
When you're entering into off of 42E, is there going to be a left-hand turn? I don't know if Donna, if that's for you, but is there going to be a turn for a left-hand, or is it just going to be 2 lanes? And how is that going to be, or you even know yet?
We don't know yet. We'll see the traffic study when it comes in, and it will tell us whether they're planning for one or not. And I don't remember the Fisher study, but I don't think they proposed one there. So, but this might tip that balance and require it, yet to be seen.
This road, if you're trying to turn anything.
It's your last chance here. Really, not just tonight, but period. So you're going out with a bang here, I must say. Okay.
I reserve the right to ask questions.
I know, and I'll come back to you here. So I owe that to you. Jeremy.
I think I share the same concern that Larry does. Just looking at this, if I was a resident in Homestead there, the potential, is there any requirements or restrictions? Industrial tends to come with 18-wheelers, unloading, loading, noises, beeping, backing up the whole 9 yards. And I think Larry made a good point earlier. Most of that's probably going to be on the north side, which backs to these homes. Is that a requirement or restriction as far as noise goes? Are we going to be seeing potential deliveries at midnight of loud tractor trailers 60 feet away from people's homes?
Without the final users identified, not entirely sure. A lot of industrial users don't require 18-wheeler deliveries 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
You can have an industrial park that is, kind of a mixture of office and then workspace type stuff that, doesn't require, things like that. Or you can have, storage where you don't have, any type of deliveries, things like that. Goodman Street is a prime example of industrial that doesn't really require 18-wheeler deliveries at all times of the day. And they're typically more general service type operations that are out there where they have work trucks and things, and they're there for work days, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So without actually knowing the end users, it's hard to say on that, because some users could be a conditional use to where that would become, into a factor at the future stage versus, a use that would be a use by right. But that would be, as Kristen had mentioned, that would come up at the site plan process. The way our buffer works right now is that it's, a minimum of 60 feet in width, and that there's essentially seven total trees that are planted within each 100 linear feet of that buffer. So that makeup can either be, 4 large deciduous trees and three medium deciduous trees or ornamental trees, or there's two large evergreen trees, three medium evergreen trees, and two large deciduous trees. So there will be a lot of tree planting, and if they can't make that work within the 60 feet, like Kristen said, they'll have 70 to 140 feet that they can make that tree planting. And just by a quick rough calculation, there'd probably be around 150 to 160 trees along that north border to the residents to the north that will ultimately be a larger makeup of some larger evergreens and some things like that that'll help with mitigation of sound and light as we go through. But yeah, to the main part of that question, without knowing what those end users would be, it's hard to tell about light, noise, delivery times, things like that at the sketch plan level.
I guess my concern is, and you hit on there, we don't know about it, but that is a possibility, right? So they're not restricted, but we could, when the time comes, if end user or final plot put a potential, because I just drive up and down 25 in these industrial parks. It seems like there's, last mile deliveries going in every single corner of every town, right? Like that's the big draw, is big warehouses where we can get things as fast as humanly possible, which tend to have a lot of. So, I mean, if that is an option to potentially restrict 24-hour noise backing to that, I mean, down the road.
Just to add on to that, Jeremy, one of the key components here is that you're going to get another bite at this apple. When the site plan comes in and the user is known, right, and their operations are known, you're going to get a chance, being the planning commission and the council, to ask all these questions.
Perfect.
And to ensure that the spirit of what she's talking about is carried out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're good.
Anything? Great. I've got a few. Was there, when this first came before us, and I realized there wasn't as much detail at that point, and there'll be further detail, obviously, to Dawn's point as we go along, and Kevin's excellent comments there as well. Was there always residential as planned as part of this?
We left that area blank on our concept plan when we came through for zoning. So we just left it as is because we didn't know what it might be.
Well, in my only comment is, it's neither here nor there, except that to me, this is a benefit to the residents. You've got, because one of the comments when the residents, again, in a very cordial way, acknowledged that if they hoped, if anything did go in here, eventually it was going to be residential. And so now, as I look at it, we've got a buffer. In other words, residential was more acceptable than industrial. The words industrial have a connotation of glue factory to me, or worse. But what I see now, and I think it's a benefit to those residents in those 5 lots closest to County Road 5, is they have a buffer in the form of residential. And because these are estate lots, one would expect estate lots, they're probably going to be, in other words, there's less houses per acre than there could be. So in and of itself, I think that's a positive. That's like rather long-winded of saying, I think that now that I see that is a positive. The fact that there's bigger lots, what should we read into that in terms of the end user in bigger lots? And I understand you could come back and the bigger lots could be subdivided into smaller lots as this process proceeds. What should we read into this, Kristen, in terms of bigger lots, in terms of end users?
Sure. Not much. So, so I would say,
let me phrase that differently.
I'll invite Warren to interrupt me if I misspeak or if there's anything to add. But in general, when we were bringing the zoning through, I believe the marketing was, the market was basically saying, hey, we're looking for some smaller lots. I heard John Turner recently say, the market is telling us right now that users want some of these larger lots rather than the smaller lots. When you do the smaller lot, one philosophy behind the smaller industrial lots or smaller commercial lots is that you can very easily sell, well, I'll sell you 1 acre if that's what you need, or, oh, if you need 5 acres, then we can do 5 acres and we can do a lot line adjustment and just create a larger lot later. So, at the time that we started Sketch, John said, well, this is what I'm hearing, so I'd like you to adjust the plan accordingly. And that's what we did. So is there anything to add to that? Okay.
Okay. All right. So a couple more here, just so Lisa gets her money's worth here as she goes out the door. Couple other, I'm reading now, Dawn, and I don't know if you have the staff, you have it in front of the neighborhood list. They concern what improvements will be made along McLaughlin Lane. What we last time around, last couple of times around, we talked more about McLaughlin, and what else can you tell us about McLaughlin Lane improvements therein?
Ultimately, with this development, the right of way for McLaughlin will have to be acquired, and McLaughlin will have to be improved to, I believe, at least a local, maybe a minor collector standard. It might Don's correcting me, minor collector standard. So a much larger, almost like your Summerfield, Summerfield's Road type kind of size. But that will have to occur with this development, especially for this one and the Fisher development to the south, to provide a secondary out for that one as well. But this development will need to, through the process, acquire that right of way. We'll have to get that right of way acquired, and then the ultimate road be built out to a larger standard.
Of course, and our standards are pretty high in those regards. So just wanted to ask about that. In the same way, the connection of Street B to McLaughlin in the appropriate location, should it curve more to the north? Kristen, your response says the road meets LCU ASS standards. Could be adjustments at plat. Anything in that regard? I don't know that this is a big concern to me, certainly, but just curious.
It's one of those things that can be evaluated. Right now, that intersection will most likely, as the T meet standard, spacing from 42E from the south to get into that. If we're bringing in a curved road, that's I don't do math in real life, but there's a lot of radius and distance that's required. So it might just create some awkwardness within that development. But it's something that could be evaluated at, when we get into the platting.
Okay. My own comments on the buffer, that was the biggest issue last time around. As I said, I think it's huge that you got residential serving as a substantial buffer for 5 of those lots, which really, as I look at this, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 other lots that are relying on the promises really. And I've never seen you not deliver the Turner Group. So, and we're confident you will as well. I think Larry's offer, and I certainly heard it, as did the thousands of people out there watching online, Larry's generous offer to contribute to that buffer in some way. I think between the residents and the high standards that our staff has and the high standards, obviously, that John Turner has, I'm confident that we'll do our best one way or the other with that buffer to everybody's satisfaction, hopefully to everybody's satisfaction. The neighbors plant extra trees. That was very generous of you. Again, we're adding that to the list here of buffer concerns. And again, let's make that happen if the residents want to, but it sounds like Larry's willing to pitch in and assist in that process as well. McLaughlin improvements, I guess we've covered that. And we're confident, Don, that as far as the traffic study goes, all those improvements, and again, I know our standards for those improvements are pretty high. And I think that's it. Commissioners, did I cover it? Lisa, do you want to have another go around here? Anything else? Anybody else? Staff, anything else? Kevin, that was for your information a few minutes ago was helpful as well. Don, anything else you want to add? Okay. All right. With that, do I have a motion on business item 6A, the Willis Farm sketch plan? Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion carries on a 5-0 vote. Reports, commissioners. Anything for the good of the order? No, hearing none. Staff, anything you want to add? Kevin, are we likely to have a meeting? Do we know this will be the first week in November? Would it be? Maybe. Okay. You can come heckle. Okay. All right. With that,
One last,
yes, sir.
you guys met him, but Justin Stone is here, and Justin's the new Public Works Director, Town Engineer. And so I'll be staying on for a little while, just to transition Justin, but he will be the man here very shortly. He's the man right now, but we're just helping him.
Very good. And those will certainly be big shoes, big shoes, probably wing tips, which only you and I know what those are and still have a pair probably to fill. Certainly. Well, we welcome Justin. We did. Kevin introduced him to everybody here before the meeting. We appreciate that. Well, from here, I'm turning it over to Lisa for the last item on the agenda. You know what to do. No, you have to say, I need to, do I have a motion to
Do I have a
adjourn?
motion to adjourn?
After all these years, you don't.
You always do it. I don't have. to
I
worry
know I
about
do it. That's why it's your turn now.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second? We're adjourned.
You got to say all in favor, say
All in
aye.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we're adjourned.
Thank you.